O great and unexplainable phenomena, you who is, was, and will be, a source of life that inspires such a gathering of life. Experience us as we are, naked and afraid, traumatized and colonized, lost and stolen, hopeful and imaginative, colorful and meaningful. We choose to gather and celebrate life as well as ourselves. We remember, honor, and learn from those who were before us and built the foundation for which we are beginning to build on. We are tired and at times weary from keeping up with human society. Sometimes we need a break, a place to share without fear of judgment. So we gather in a public space to be with the many poetic images of God. Greetings, tribe. Once a month, under a full moon, religiously traumatized people and individuals navigating life beyond the four walls of religion gather. We gather to listen, share, and express ideas, feelings, and experiences, such as, welcome to public space. Another wonderful month has passed. We are here in August now. So this month we are talking about deconstructing dogma, challenging assumptions, and embracing uncertainty. Before we get heavy into it, just wanted to bring up interesting astrological good tidbit. This full moon is interesting because it's actually full moon in Leo. And so full moon in Leo means that the moon is astrologically in the sign of Leo at its fullest phase, So this event typically amplifies Leo traits such as creativity, self-expression, confidence. It's often seen as a time to showcase your talents, pursue passions, very boldly, embrace leadership roles. Emotionally, this means that the full moon in Leo can bring out a desire for recognition, romance, and even dramatic expression. It's a time when personal authenticity and creativity are emphasized, encouraging individuals to shine brightly in their endeavors. So we just wanted to bring that up to keep in mind for the community that navigating August is going to be very challenging. And it's going to be challenging because we have so much ample energy from the sun in Leo that it's going to push us to be just a little bit more creative if we choose to. And we're going to see amazing things come out of that. So there's some rituals you can think of basically this month. It would be like creative rituals, get behind art, painting, clay, get into something creative, putting together puzzle, Legos, photographs, photography, whatever, anything artistic. This is the month where you want to try to channel your energy through that, and you're going to see phenomenal results. This is also a good time for self-love. And for this community, that's huge because majority, if not all of us, have suffered from or are still challenged by religious trauma. you know, and those things can cause us to have less self-love for ourselves and reduce our confidence. So this month definitely is a great time. Astrologically, we are being given energy from the universe with these particular alignments to help us, love ourselves even deeper and gain a deeper confidence for ourselves. You could do things like, standing in front of a mirror, reciting affirmations to yourself, speak loving, really like genuine, compassionate things to yourself, like really be extra nice to yourself this month, and you're going to see like so much healing on the back end from just doing simple things like affirming that you are a beautiful, strong, and bold person, and that you have so much capability and potential. Um, just to throw in there, we have created a podcast uh, called The Shaman's Meditations. And it just so happens that this month in August with Leo Moon is focused on the heart chakra. So we created a guided meditation on how you can begin to unblock your heart chakra. So that's very helpful. And you might find others as well. But if you're lost or confused or don't know where to start, you can definitely start there. Check out our podcast. It's great to listen to headset or out loud in a speaker, but it's a good pace, and it's good to just play, and either partake in the meditation or just listen to, in a calm, relaxing area. Also, this month, the element of fire. If you are doing rituals with fire, maybe even writing down goals or fears and burning them. Burning can be like a process of purifying as well. So fire is very much a complicated yet alchemic element, that we can use to help ourselves grow and become better. Also, dance and movement is big too under Leo moon. So if you feel called to, just dance and move your body and listen to like a really cool playlist, or maybe put together a good playlist of songs that inspire you and really remind you to keep on going, that you're so great, cheesy song maybe, but the Rocky song, Eye of the Tiger, that would definitely be a great song to add to your playlist this month. And songs like that even refer to lighting the fire, the inner fire, because we are in this element of fire this month under the Leo. And so trying to use what we have available to us is the Path-Maker way. And so for all you fellow Path-Makers out there, keep these things in mind as you are trekking and navigating the unknown this month. So with that, let's get into this month's theme. And it's really just exploring the process of deconstructing religious dogma and embracing the uncertainties that come with spiritual exploration. So as usual, through open dialogue and critical inquiry, we'll together examine the beliefs and doctrines that have shaped our worldviews, challenging assumptions and discovering new paths to meaning and understanding. And so, just saying, did you have anything you wanted to start with or anything that came to mind? No? So I got some notes on this. We didn't want to just shoot from the hip on this topic because we wanted to bring up, so to speak, hard evidence of how these things are affecting us. Maybe not all of us, but a good majority of us, a good number of us. That number, honestly, is unknown. It's still a mystery because it's fluctuating. There's people that have not stepped forward and said that they are religiously traumatized. So that doesn't mean that they haven't been religiously traumatized. And so this is why this number is so mysterious and fluctuating. It's hard to get a fixed, steady number because, it reflects us, the people. And religious trauma is one of those things that a lot of us believe we should be ashamed of, like we did something wrong. Um, and it's not like that. But unfortunately, a lot of people believe that. And with that, we have to, do research and bring tangible evidence and knowledge to this dialogue. This cannot just be from feelings or past experiences at this point. We have to bring up these doctrines and these dogmas, these rules that, pretty much religions can agree on that they believe and uphold, and then question those things, you know. And not all of us are familiar with many different religions. Many of us are not familiar with multi-faith. This is something that we have over the years been studying greatly and learning from greatly in terms of trying to speak about and heal through religious trauma. Um, So yeah, just to get into it, first thing we thought about was our perception of self, right? So in the Christian faith, they have a term called the Imago Dei. And so in Christianity and Judaism, actually, the belief that humans are created in the image of God, which translate in Latin to Imago Dei, emphasizes the inherent dignity and worth of each individual, shaping self-identity and concepts of human rights. Then we have another term called submission to God. In Islam, another Abrahamic faith, the notion of submission to the will of Allah shapes an individual's self-identity as a servant of God, fostering a sense of purpose and direction in life. And last but not least is original sin. And in Christianity, the doctrine of original sin affects self-perception by highlighting human fallibility and the need for redemption, influencing concepts of guilt, repentance, and moral responsibility. So we didn't go into naming all and every, but we just picked three, which we thought was really interesting. And these three affect our perception of ourself greatly. And so, again, my rhetoric doesn't come from what's right and wrong, but it comes from a perception of these are interesting things that influence and affect how we as individuals choose to understand and see and identify ourselves. So these, we could say, outward things, ideas, concepts, affect how we identify and look in the mirror and see ourselves, is what we're saying. And so this adds into religious trauma on a very subliminal level, because whether you want to believe it or not, it's still happening. Because if you believe or you're influenced by any of these three concepts, which are religious concepts, then religion has influenced your identity and your shaping of your identity. And therefore, if you were to step out of religion, you would have a very, very traumatic and difficult time identifying yourself, because you can only identify yourself within religion. And this is problematic because humans are beyond these things. We created religion. Religion didn't create us. And so the system of belief that we created, if that is controlling us, has become somehow superior to us, don't you think that's a little problematic? It's kind of, excuse me, it's kind of reminding me of the whole Frankenstein myth, right? Where this scientist created a monster, quote unquote, and that monster was out of control. And now that monster had to go around and went on its own journey and went around the world and did these things. So it's like we forgot that we created these things. And now we're at a place where we think that these things are above us and they can't be challenged or questioned. They're absolute and supreme, you know? But moving on, because we have a few others and we don't want to take up too much time. Relationships with others was something that we looked into. And across the Abrahamic faith alone, which is Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, the Abrahamic religions emphasize the importance of community and brotherhood. So we're emphasizing brotherhood because the underlying religious trauma is patriarchal, you know, by focusing on the male and then infusing that concept of the focus on the male into the religious ideas, you now have created a religious trauma towards feminine and female. I can't make this shit up. I'm just laying it out for people to understand and see how these very simple things have become very complicated and we don't stop to think about it, you know? So yes, community and brotherhood, the concept of the imam in Islam, the church in Christianity, and the Jewish people as a chosen nation underscores collective identity and mutual responsibility, but primarily focused on the male. The next point is ethical interactions. So there's ethical guidelines in these religions, such as the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In Christianity, and similar teachings in Judaism and Islam promote principles of fairness, compassion, and justice in interpersonal relationships. Now, of course, going back to the first emphasis, which was on the brotherhood, these things are all filtered through male perceptions. So very quickly, a good example is a man can rape a woman in the Middle East under these faiths such as Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. And yet somehow it's the woman's fault, how she dressed. She led this man to temptation. You know, all this blase jazz, right? So it somehow justifies the male seems to always get away with things. And we see this even in the stories. It's not hiding, you know? The Bible is probably the most printed book in human history that we know of. And whatever version you get, it tells of a male dominant story. Even their interpretation of what the divine, the universe is with male features. A man, him, you know? So, you know, this is nothing new. But moving on, understanding of the divine across multiple religions is different. But what we see is across the Abrahamic faiths, the three, they seem to share monotheism, which is the belief in a single omnipotent God. You know, God creates a unified understanding of the divine, contrasting the polytheistic traditions and influencing philosophical and theological discourses from this, that there is only one God, right? And, you know, me early on in my studies, I used to think that this was problematic, you know, like, shouldn't be like this, blah, blah, blah. But when we look at it from the universal perspective and say, God is the universe, right? But the universe is not one thing. You know, the universe is a very complex thing. It's everything, right? But when we go through monotheism, we always are imagining one singular thing. God, the one, God, you know? And so it just becomes traumatic for some of us. You understand? Because it doesn't help us heal or understand the traumas that we are enduring and bearing. It doesn't help. If you tell me that there's one God, well, then what is this God doing when we're getting hurt? This God is picking and choosing? And then the rhetoric of chosen comes in. How do I get chosen? How do I become part of the chosen? And then the religion is very quickly laying out, well, you got to dress a certain way, you got to look a certain way, you got to talk a certain way. You got to show up on a certain day at a certain time. You have to donate X amount, towards the kingdom. Not the kingdom, but the kingdom. That same domain ruled by man. It's- that's pretty traumatic, no? We would think so too. um, There's also the concept of revelation, the concept that God reveals, quote unquote, himself and quote unquote, his will through prophets and sacred texts, shapes religious practices, spiritual beliefs, and the way individuals seek divine guidance and understanding. So, revelation, that's an interesting thing, right? Because it seems like there's certain individuals that have the privilege to have revelation and others don't, or their revelation is not as valuable as certain privileged individuals' revelation.
Now that you mentioned revelation, I can't help to think about information and just how we can see across society those that are with or without wealth when we're talking about money, so capitalism. And so you'll see how those with wealth can afford that kind of higher education, the private schools that are teaching their students how to actually be among society. So becoming those true leaders that they themselves are trying to conserve.
Yeah.
And so it's not that it's not really like an open invitation,
right,
to the masses, really. It looks like it. And so many of us, we try to work hard, really get on the hamster wheel to be as close as that title or position. But when you mention this revelation, all I can think about is information, which at times when information is kept from us, those are hidden truths.
Mm.
And then these hidden truths are what make us human beings feel this freedom, or just even when we talk about, or recently has come up a lot, this Christ consciousness.
Mm.
And how that is something that we can all share amongst each other.
Yeah.
But the way that we've been raised, and a lot of the dogmas that we have come to believe as our own identity, and we claim it wholeheartedly. And so we begin, or it had begun, that separation piece where we've all been just going our own ways, like not necessarily working together as a whole, but definitely not even seeing each other like from this human perspective. Like we don't look at ourselves like that eye to eye kind of
Mm.
level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, like, how does that look like when we approach life that way? Then there's that kind of like oppressive or this dictator like personality comes in where we feel like we're better than the other person or group.
Mm.
And so maybe this religion is what holds the ultimate truth amongst the other ones.
Mm.
And so that's that separation. But then there's this illusion, like this veil, that this is what God wants. But to me, like, I can't help but think that this is all created by men, or man, I should say.
Yeah.
But when I say men, men, I do think about that brotherhood that you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it so happens that recently I received, it was like a pamphlet
Mm-hmm.
I received in the mail. And my son, he's going into college, and he's becoming a senior this year, so he has to make some decisions.
Yeah.
So that includes higher education. And then on this pamphlet, it advertised this university that I've never have seen or come across. And it has to do with a Catholic, I guess you could say, form of denomination, which is the Assumptionists.
Mm.
And so the university is called Assumption University.
Mm.
And then I just wanted to look into the school, like what made or what influence inspired the name of the school. So it was just like something that I've never seen for it to be called that way. And then that's when I learned that it's been around for many years.
Mm.
And so this brotherhood that you talk about, this community, has followed a lot of these religions, that they began from Abrahamic beliefs.
Yeah.
Whereas really the men,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about men, not women, but men, how they are the breadwinners of the house. They're the ones that create the laws
Mm.
at the house,
Mm-hmm.
or their land,
Mm-hmm.
but they own. And so the Assumptionists, it all began with men of prayer.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so for me, what that looks like, especially during the times where women did not have a voice, just like many other groups, many other minority groups
Yeah.
that are not included in the status quo. And yeah, so that was really like eye-opening for me, even though it's not a new concept really, because I couldn't help to think and see how the timeline of the school's history of Assumption University, excuse me, in 1961, it was when the first group of women, or few women in the school that graduated from that school and obtained a higher education degree.
Mm.
And then obviously during those times, a lot of women did not have voice. They couldn't go out there and
Mm.
choose the jobs that maybe they felt like called upon to do and
Mm-hmm.
lead, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't help but think how for many years, a lot of these religious institutions, groups, communities have been around during the times where the inequalities have existed.
Mm.
And yet it was still, maybe I'm using the wrong term, but maybe that it was still allowed in a way. And then I come back and I then ask myself, so if God is so powerful, omnipresent, and does goodwill and all these things, and I'm a follower of that, why is it that I haven't advocated for those that have not been liberated, or for those that have been oppressed in such a way?
Mm.
It's just like there's so much controversy, so much hypocrisy at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it brings me back to the whole Adam and Eve story. And how is it that the man, he was the one that was called upon to do certain things, where the woman just followed? It even goes as far as something that I think we were talking about in conversation, the naming of the animals. So I think it was Noah.
Adam.
Yes.
Genesis.
So in Genesis, Adam, that he named the animals.
Mm-hmm.
Why couldn't it be something that was equally distributed? Like, hey, you'll do this, and you will do, take on this half of maybe naming the animals, like what you feel is inspiring you to, call it what it is, or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. Why couldn't Adam and Eve been chosen for those things?
Right.
Not just one over the other.
Mm-hmm.
That to me looks like favoritism.
Mm-hmm.
And when something like that, you can point it out and see it. It's like nothing has really changed. Like things have changed, but nothing has really changed. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel you. We feel you. So true. Yeah, no, that was a good that was a good example you brought up of found in Genesis. We were talking about the story of Adam and Eve and the start of life, and it was very interesting to look over that story, that myth, and notice how Adam was selected to name things. Let's say that named all the animals and stuff. And getting a little philosophical here, what does it really mean to name something? Right? This is not like a childish thing. This is not like a simple task. Like to know something means, to name something means to know something. We can't name you if we don't know you or know what you're about or what's your essence. To know something is to know the essence, right? Philosophically, generally speaking here, right? But to name something, you have to not only know it, but then find a name that suits it, like you don't just name it randomly. Like this whole story is breezed over, very lightly. It kind of, if you really examine it over time, spend some time, as the Christians say, read your Bible. In Genesis, this section of storytelling is breezed over. Okay. Life was created here on earth in 7 days. That's how the story would say it, using the number 7, which is symbolic. But then when we look at the symbolism of naming all the animals, like that, it makes me wonder. Like you said, we were conditioned, we were taught, we were led to believe that God is all knowing, all being. Why would God ask Adam, a symbolic representation of humanity, to name everything such as the animals on earth? If it doesn't already imply or suggest that we've been given domain, governance, this authority subliminally, with this compassionate gesture of, we like to imagine that God sat with Adam like a father to a son and said, go ahead, name them. It's like I'm giving you this authority. You and solely you are the representation of me here on earth, right? And we see this play into the doctrines. We see this play into the narrative building into the Second Testament. We see this in the edits. We see that there's a reinforcement that man has been given domain. The male version of humanity has been given domain. And the female has been told that they should not, because apparently in the beginning, they fumbled the ball, so to speak. They messed it up. And so God was like, because you messed it up. This is all implications, by the way. It's not there. It doesn't say, but if you read it in between the lines, it's saying, well, when you ask, why wasn't it evenly distributed, this dominion over the earth? It's apparently because woman decided to go rogue and do what she wants to do. And so God punishes her with a period every month. And they now have to live outside the garden, the perfect world environment that was given to them. And above all, now the man's in charge. Let the man do all the decision making, because when you made a choice, it seemed to just go against God's will. But let's keep in mind, in context, historical and religious context here, without applying emotion, being objective as can be, this perception of God is man's perception. So we only know man's story of Genesis. We don't know the woman's female story of Genesis. It's the man's story or point of view that suggests that she did something that God didn't like. And the very understanding of God was based on the male first, because technically how the story goes, the male was created first. This is another reinforcement symbolism, like the symbolism reinforces this male dominance, male governance, male should rule XYZ, like it's there. And like when we read these things, we're reading them and believing them. A lot of people agree that these things are like spells, and if we read it a certain way and you hear like very hardcore believers, reciting the Bible word for word, they're reciting spells. They're conjuring up magical things because energy is moving with these, combination of words in the context in which they are put. It's the whole abracadabra thing, like you say a certain list of words in a certain kind of format, like a puzzle, like a key, you unlock something, you open a door, you open a portal into inviting something in or letting something out, right? And it's like on the most basic Christian level, we're just so surrounded and saturated with these demonic beliefs that prevent us from thinking like that or considering that perspective. They say, oh, like, no, this is not magical. All that stuff is for over there. Like, we start compartmentalizing things in our mind and say that's not religious and that's not sacred, and it's like, wow, that's so bold, because who can really say and claim what is sacred and what is not sacred? And love with Mercy Elliott, in his book, The Sacred and Profane. Like, reading that book, it helped me understand, like, everything that we think is sacred is valid, but it's not absolute. Most times we find ourselves these days finding sacredness in memories, dreams, but not on the physical plane. Like, we don't stumble upon a magical forest on this physical plane, and it's sacred. It's in our minds, it's in our memories, it's in the things we believe. We create the sacred, overlapping the profane, the mundane, the everyday. Life is sacred, and life overlays over these things that we do every day. So, the garbage man picking up trash is sacred. The local children going to school to learn is sacred, regardless of the propaganda that they're being taught in public schools. That is not healthy. It's still the ritual of them doing living their lives to the best of their ability is sacred. And when we sit here and we have doctrines and books and writings that suggest that God somehow had this one-on-one connection and told them in English of all languages that, this is what I need you to do. This is how I want you to live your life. Like, really? You want us all to look the same, think the same, be the same, feel the same, do the same? Like, is that really what God of the universe, the universe that's so complex that we're learning now through all modern science and collaboration with philosophy, to see that we are living in something way more complex than we ever imagined? And you're telling me the thing that created that wanted us to be simple here on earth with these very simple rituals of repeating and being the same? Like, you're saying God ordained 1984, the novel, the film? Like, come on.
Like, this is why we have to remain with this constant critical mindset.
Yeah.
And just because historically we've been, I would say, programmed
Mm-hmm.
to believe that this is a man-made world, that only men run the world, in a sense. And so where's the feminine influence? When has that ever happened? It has, but it's been rejected and it's been ignored. How many times are people going to continue to lose their life just sharing their ideas or sharing a new way of life? We're just constantly doing the same it's like a uniform kind of mindset, that we're doing the same things over and over, over and over. Like, yeah, it's a ritual, but not every ritual is healthy, in the sense that the kind of rituals that we have adapted to, conform to, these are more of something that was given to us, to the public, to have this behavioral kind of like, it's so hard to explain, because it's like it's there and we see it.
Yeah.
We see it daily, but it keeps us in line. And so we are those soldiers. You know, we're being bred to fight some kind of war that they've told us, you know, we need to fight this dragon. We need to kill each other, basically. And for what? Where's this power coming from? So when you did mention them, it kind of, it sounds like a small-minded God in a sense. And so what we're saying and what we're agreeing to is that God is so limited. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And so if an idea or a system has been breathing, has been living for so long, it's so difficult to kind of challenge it and have it replaced with something that is more flexible, something that people can easily, I don't know, like, I guess, be seen, feel comfortable, not live their lives like they're just surviving day by day. You know, and then like we do look at animals and things like that, and we say, oh, animals, they're not as smart as humans because we build airplanes and all these things. What have animals done?
Yeah.
In a way, they're just so mundane. They're, you know, they're boring. Like, they're just there. But I think those kind of primitive ways are actually the things that we're trying to go back to.
It's true.
We're trying to remember our own primitive ways that we forgot, even if it's spiritually, whatever that looks like. We're here right now in this very moment. We're breathing with whatever senses we have within us. And it's like, we don't really know what is there, you know, like how we should be living our lives and things like that. Like, we don't know for sure. So we kind of like miss this opportunity that's surrounding us right now. Like, we think we know what this life is about. We want happiness and these things. We would rather have happiness versus having peace. And to me, peace is not the peace that I've been taught to believe in. Peace for me now is the understanding and just being. Because it doesn't matter which side you're on. In their own way, they both are right.
Yeah.
But in whatever perspective you're falling onto, you will immediately say that the other side is wrong and then I'm right. But then when you shift it, it's the same thing. So we're just in this constant cycle.
It's true. It's like a binary cycle where we're oscillating between only two reactions, two options, two choices, like a dilemma. And you know, this for me has been problematic. And trying to free myself, we had to say, how do we break free from that? How do we break free from that constant belief that you have to only choose between two? Good, bad, you know, evil, righteous, you know, sacred, profane. It's like, how do we break free from that? And for me, over the years, we feel like we have slowly broken free from that way of thinking, you know, and it's changed how we make choices. And It's changed how we interact with people. It's changed how we do business and show up in the world. You know, we're not here fighting to prove something, you know, and we felt like we were trying to prove something while stuck in between this process of oscillating between good, bad, righteous, demonizing, you know, like all these things, like, but it really comes down to right and wrong. And for me, religion has set the foundation for my mind to understand that what is right and what is bad is based on these beliefs. And so when we set forth on our own personal journey to go and step out of religion and see what that looked like, what that felt like, what were the rules there, you know, we started to see life a lot different. It's not a good or bad thing. That's what we learn. You know, when you step outside of that system, it's like, life is so much more than just good and bad. If you only stuck to that, you're missing out on the in between. And that's why we were so like captivated by this journey of going in between things. And it was this journey of going in between things that led us to realize we have so much religious trauma. Like religion has, for me, shaped 99% of my reality. You know, naturally, we are a spiritual person, you know, being a Pisces and all, Pisces sun. We just are always drawn to the mystery and the things that we can't see. For me, like religion was like talking about these things, you know, when I was younger, and I was fascinated. I was curious, but I wasn't interested at all ever to become a follower like that. You know, like I always just was searching for information, like you say. You know, I just had a curiosity. If God is real, we should be able to pursue God and find God in our own way. But if you are preventing me from looking for God, then that tells me that the God you described is not real. And you're preventing me from looking for that God because you know I'm going to find out that God's dead. That God's not real. Like Nietzsche said, God is dead. If we only prescribe and believe that God is these things that the doctrines have set forth, then God has been dead for a long time. And we have not yet truly experienced or began to try to understand the God of the universe, the creator of all things. And so for me, you know, living and existing now for some time off path, outside of religion, we've interesting enough, we haven't marinated or developed more hatred towards religion. Instead, we've developed more love and empathy because of this very principle of understanding that no one's right or wrong. How can one harbor hate? For me to harbor hate means that we subliminally believe that we have the absolute perspective and the right answer, but a humble, you know, servant or a humble follower of God, the universe, the creator of all things, has to, you know, embody an idea that God is not just one thing.
This here brings me to this thought. You saying all these things, I thought about a child or just someone that grows up, maybe, you know, stable home, or they're living missing a very detrimental piece in their life that creates like this foundation for them. And so I think about when kids create an imaginary friend or get really fixated on this hero, this character in a way. Like I can see sort of like symmetry between like some of these religions,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so creating this character, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you think about the members, it's people that most of them will agree, I am suffering, or I don't believe in myself, or these things are going on, I don't feel safe.
Right.
So then this has to be created in order to create this world, so to speak.
Mm.
I don't really want to use illusion, but it's like an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
It's a story
Mm-hmm.
that is created. And so what do? You believe it. Anything can be a story. You know, this right here can be a story to someone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a narrative.
Yeah.
And it's not for everybody.
True.
So it's just so fascinating to make that correlation of just like when we create these characters and we get like so connected to them. It's like a source of life, like it feeds us some kind of energy.
Mm.
You know?
It's true.
And then it can even go as far as getting like physical things that represent that character. And so if I carry it with me, I am safe, or I feel strong. Just like if someone has the Superman, you know, symbol, the emblem, and they put the sticker in their car, or they wear the shirt, anything. Or in religion, you carry something, a symbol with you, you feel protected.
Mm-hmm.
That's because you already gave it your own power. And so now it's true, it's real.
Yes. No, that's real because in shamanic practices, shamans tend to manipulate energy, right? We use terms like what's the word? Alchemy, you know, using alchemy to transfer energy, which energy is the very rawest material in the universe, energy. But from energy, we can fine tune it to become whatever we want because everything requires energy, right? And so shamans notoriously infuse energy into artifacts, you know, like physical, tangible items, you know, relics, stones. Stones are great savers of energy. Like they hold energy. You know, like the very stones we wear, we have to recharge them under full moons or under the sun because that energy is being depleted when we're touching it. Because certain stones, for example, you could wear for stress or fear, and if you activate it because you're afraid or stressful, you're now drawing energy from that stone that has been infused with energy prior. And you know that these things are working because if your stones are on E, so to speak, and you didn't recharge them with energy, then yes, they're not serving you. And you feel the difference. You know, these can also be used as protection items as well. So it's not just in shamanic practices, but it's popular in shamanic practices. You also see this in the practice of spiritualities like voodoo. Um, you see this in variations of mystical beliefs. The Kabbalah is another one, great one, and they are the spiritual offset of Judaism. So they follow more and believe more in astrology, numbers, energy. And they've even used terms like angels and demons to symbolize energetic characters, as you would say. And when we give something a name, and you find that even in Hollywood, you know, they get some things kind of right. And to know the name of something doesn't give you absolute power, but now it gives you an understanding of what you're dealing with. So you do have certain power over that thing.
See it.
Yeah. And you're more familiar with its pattern of movement, pattern of existence, belief. So this can definitely correlate to something that, someone could say, oh, that artifact, that statue is demonic, right? You say, well, what makes it demonic? And it's the beliefs that are infused into that statue, what it symbolizes and represents. But what it symbolizes and represents evokes the energy in us. The same thing can be said about religion. When we see the Virgin Mary statue, whether different cultures respond differently. Some cultures of people respond more sacredly towards the Virgin Mary than Jesus or Yeshua. And so you see this not as like an alternate religion. It's still within Christianity. It's just that, amongst the Catholics, they believe in this spreading of energies, like people become saints, or saints are these archangels that are divine beings that symbolize X, Y, and Z. So whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, it's real. Yes, I'm not dismissing it, but it's what we believe. And so when you ask someone, what they're saying and what they're doing, what does that mean to you? That's how you get to the core of understanding. That's how they perceive it. But just because you come across it and you don't necessarily practice that and believe it doesn't mean that it's not real. It's just that it doesn't affect you as much because what's protecting us is our beliefs. I know that sounds very simple, but it's very complex. Like, our beliefs are energy, and again, these are all things that we pick up and learn that come from different various religions. But it wasn't until we were able to step out of religion that we were able to absorb these things, in the context in which they are being used, and not come with preconceived notions of shit like, que diablo, causing me to have fear because maybe a group of Christians believe that's of the devil. Instead you look at it and you learn something like, I can see how people may perceive this as bad, but it's really not when you see it from this perspective. And so it goes right back to what we've been talking about today, like the perceptions of things is dangerous. And so our whole premise today was talking about religious perceptions. They created doctrines off these things. And then so by creating doctrines, they made it into sort of stone, like it's law. Like, you have to follow this, And so you see the dangers of that. If we were to go around, and we have seen that historically, like this global cultural colonization, right? And this colonization is very diverse. It affects people in different ways, but for the sake of this space and this community, we're talking how colonization has affected humans in a religiously traumatizing way when they go around the world spreading these beliefs that we spoke about today, especially among the Abrahamic faiths. Let's be real. I'm not saying that other religions are not trying to spread their beliefs. I think every religion is trying to spread their belief because they're trying to share their information. But what we're talking about is, historically, there's been several historical accounts of how Christianity alone, Catholicism alone has just been colonizing. And it's been heavily religiously traumatizing. Like they've affected other cultures, with their belief that they have to convert others to their beliefs. Like, this is the religious trauma. This is the hurting factor that's damaging,
It comes down to, this is the only way. It makes me think about when people say, well, this is the best.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, have you tried everything else?
It's true.
And if you haven't, then what you're saying is dangerous.
Yeah. And to add to that, it's temporary, right? existing outside of religion, temporary, has been a very powerful and key word for me in my practice and in my faith. As someone like a theopoet, we say things and we claim that we're experiencing God, but we're never claiming that we're experiencing something indefinitely. We always set the tone with, this is a poetically temporary description or perspective of God, but we're not sitting here like we did the Theo poem, Mi Pastalon, and love that Theo poem because the food was just so good. We were having a divine experience with that food, like whole nother level, man. Like, and we're not saying that God will always be found in that meal, but we're saying when we experienced it, it was divine, right? And so we can't go around arguing with people whether their dreams are divine or not. How do we know? So it's all based on this temporary perspective, like everything is temporary, everything is changing. Now, yes, as a path maker, it is very stressful because we're not accustomed to that. We were conditioned and brought into a system of belief that tells us that things are start and finish.
Very absolute.
Very absolute. And it's created on straight lines. These things have serious effects and implications on how we view the world, how we view other people, how we treat other people, and how we treat ourselves. And so that's why we're talking about these things today. This is not an attack. This is more of sharing information. And people have to start accepting the skeletons in their faith's closet. Because all these faiths, no one has an empty closet, so to speak. Every faith has its own skeleton or two in its closet because every faith has been used and weaponized in some form of political power historically. Just keeping it real. That's what we've come across in our multi-faith studies. Not only have we learned the most divine and sacred and the goodness of each one, or most of them, we should say, because there's so many, but the common, more larger practicing ones, these are the ones that have influences on hundreds of thousands of people, like at a given time. So, these structures of belief have been weaponized, and we need to slow down and really question what we believe and see if we are still in alignment with the larger group, or maybe we find ourselves in between. And with that said, if you think that you find yourself in this in-between state, join the community, join the dialogue. We would love to hear your opinions, what you've learned, what you're still struggling with. We also have a survey questionnaire going out. You can see that on our website, aShamaninJourney.com. And you can join the public space community from there as well to see what's happening. But most importantly, stay informed. All right. With that said, keep in mind this August 2024, full moon in Leo. Act accordingly, people. It's time for us to wake up. It's time to clean house, get our stuff together. If you feel like this month you are, finding yourself starting new friends, new life, new job, new opportunities, that's a great thing and you should embrace it. But if you also feel like you're experiencing these things and not feeling supported, our community is here and you can be a part of it. So, until next month, be well, be safe. We love you guys.